My sister Jessica grabbed my 7-year-old son Tyler's brand new mountain bike and deliberately shoved it down our concrete front steps while 20 family members watched and laughed like it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. The metallic blue frame twisted with a sickening crunch as the wheels bent completely out of shape. Tyler stood frozen in our driveway, tears streaming down his cheeks as Jessica trampled his art supplies into the gravel and tore pages from his new books. My wife Sarah covered her mouth in horror. The family treated this destruction like prime entertainment until my father Harold slowly rose from his lawn chair, removed his wedding ring with steady hands, looked directly at Jessica, and spoke 4 words that silenced every voice forever. To understand how this nightmare unfolded, I need to take you back to the beginning. Growing up, I was always the responsible older brother while Jessica lived as the family princess who could do no wrong. Our mother, Patricia, excused every tantrum, every broken rule, every cruel comment as Jessica being spirited and creative. When Jessica threw paint at our neighbor's fence at age 12, Patricia called it artistic expression. When she crashed Dad's truck at 16, Patricia blamed the other driver. When she dropped out of college twice and racked up credit card debt, Patricia insisted life was just harder for sensitive souls like Jessica. Meanwhile, I studied engineering, graduated with honors, and built a solid career designing bridges and infrastructure projects. I married Sarah, a wonderful elementary school teacher, and we bought a modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood outside Phoenix. Sarah and I struggled through 3 years of infertility treatments before Tyler was born, making him even more precious to us. Last year brought another challenge when Sarah was diagnosed with breast cancer. The chemotherapy was brutal, but she fought through it with incredible strength, and her doctors declared her cancer-free just 4 months ago. This birthday party was supposed to mark a new chapter of joy after our difficult year. I had spent weeks planning every detail because Tyler deserved something special. I painted the garage, bought new outdoor furniture, and even hired a small bounce house company. The yard looked perfect, with blue and silver streamers matching Tyler's favorite colors. I had saved for months to buy him that mountain bike, the same model he had admired at the bike shop every Saturday when we went for ice cream. Our extended family started arriving around noon. Uncle Robert brought his wife Linda and their twin daughters. Cousin Amanda came with her boyfriend Derek and their toddler. My father's sister Diane drove up from Tucson with her husband Frank. Even my great-aunt Martha made the trip despite being 82 years old. Everyone seemed genuinely excited to celebrate Tyler and see Sarah looking healthy again. But Jessica arrived an hour late, already smelling like wine, wearing sunglasses indoors, and carrying an attitude that could cut glass. She barely acknowledged Tyler's excited greeting and immediately started making snide remarks about our decorations being too fancy and the food being expensive. When Tyler showed her his new baseball glove, she commented that some kids got too many presents and needed to learn about real life. I should have recognized the warning signs. Jessica had been unemployed for 8 months since losing her job at a marketing firm for chronic tardiness. She was 32 years old and still living in the same apartment Dad helped her rent 5 years ago. Patricia had been pressuring me to offer Jessica work connections or even direct financial help, but I had learned from experience that enabling Jessica only made her behavior worse. During the gift opening, Jessica positioned herself right next to Tyler, supposedly to help him with the wrapping paper. But I noticed how her smile turned forced when Tyler opened the expensive art set Sarah had chosen. Her jaw tightened when he unwrapped the new bicycle helmet that matched his bike. And her hands actually clenched into fists when Patricia complimented us on being such generous parents. The first sign of real trouble came when Jessica volunteered to get Tyler some juice. She returned with a cup that was suspiciously full for a 7-year-old, and I later realized she had added something that made Tyler slightly hyperactive and unfocused. At the time, I thought he was just excited about his presence. Jessica kept making comments throughout the afternoon about children needing to understand that not everyone gets nice things, and how some families spoil their kids instead of teaching them values. The other adults nodded along, not realizing these barbs were aimed directly at Sarah and me. Patricia actually agreed, saying modern parents give children too much without making them earn anything. I felt the first flutter of real concern when Jessica started handling Tyler's gifts, roughly claiming she was just examining the quality. She bent the pages of his new books while pretending to read them. She pressed too hard on his electronic games while pretending to understand how they worked. She even managed to loosen the training wheels on his old bike, while supposedly checking if he still needed them. But I was not prepared for what happened when Tyler opened his final present, the mountain bike I had been planning to give him for 6 months. His face lit up like Christmas morning. He actually jumped up and down, thanking Sarah and me over and over. The whole family gathered around to admire the shiny blue frame and the cool gear shifters. That was when Jessica's mask finally slipped completely. I saw pure hatred flash across her face as she watched Tyler's joy. Not jealousy, not disappointment, but actual malice toward a 7-year-old child who had done nothing except be born into a family that could provide for him. The destruction started small. Jessica accidentally bumped Tyler's new remote control car with her foot, sending it skittering across the concrete. Everyone laughed when she apologized dramatically. Then she pretended to trip while holding Tyler's art supplies, scattering crayons and markers everywhere. More laughter from the family, who thought clumsy Jessica was being her usual entertaining self. But I was watching her face, and I knew this was not accidental. What happened next will haunt me forever, because I watched my sister systematically destroy my son's happiness while my entire family treated it like dinner theater. Jessica started with Tyler's new baseball uniform, a pristine white jersey with blue trim that he planned to wear to Little League tryouts next week. She was holding her wine glass near the folded uniform when she suddenly lurched forward, splashing deep red wine across the white fabric in a pattern too deliberate to be accidental. The family erupted in laughter as Jessica gasped and covered her mouth in fake shock. Uncle Robert slapped his knee and declared that Jessica could trip over her own shadow. Cousin Amanda immediately pulled out her phone to take pictures of the stained uniform, saying it looked like a crime scene. Even Aunt Martha chuckled and shook her head at Jessica's clumsiness. Tyler stared at his ruined uniform with confusion rather than anger. At 7 years old, he still believed in accidents and trusted adults to care about his feelings. Sarah quickly grabbed paper towels and tried to blot the wine, but we both knew the uniform was destroyed. The deep red stain had soaked through multiple layers of fabric. Jessica apologized with exaggerated remorse, but I caught the satisfied glint in her eyes. She was just getting started. The remote control car came next. Tyler had been carefully reading the instruction manual, excited to learn all the functions of his new toy. Jessica offered to help him set it up, and Tyler gratefully handed over the controller. She pretended to study the buttons while Tyler arranged the car on our smooth driveway. Then Jessica stepped backward directly onto the car with her full weight. The plastic body cracked with a sharp sound like breaking bones. The wheels popped off their axles. The antenna snapped in half. She ground her heel into the wreckage while pretending to regain her balance, crushing the internal electronics completely. Uncle Robert burst into fresh laughter, calling Jessica a one-woman demolition crew. Cousin Derek joked that she should hire herself out for construction projects. Aunt Linda giggled and said some people were just born clumsy. The family's amusement grew louder with each destroyed gift, as if they were watching a slapstick comedy instead of deliberate cruelty. Tyler picked up the broken pieces of his car, trying to fit them back together. His lower lip started trembling, but he did not cry yet. He still believed this was somehow fixable, that adults would make things right. I started forward to intervene, but Patricia grabbed my arm and told me not to make Jessica feel worse about accidents. Sarah looked at me with growing alarm, but the family was so busy laughing that no one else noticed our concern. Jessica scanned the remaining gifts with the calculating gaze of a predator selecting prey. Her eyes settled on the mountain bike, Tyler's most treasured present, the gift he had been dreaming about for months. My stomach dropped as I realized her intentions. She walked over to where Tyler had carefully positioned his new bike, running her fingers along the blue frame while commenting on how expensive it looked. Tyler beamed with pride, explaining all the features he had memorized from the bike shop visits. Jessica nodded and smiled, asking if she could take a closer look. Tyler stepped aside trustingly as Jessica grasped the handlebars. For a moment, I thought maybe I had misjudged her intentions. Then she looked directly at me with cold triumph and deliberately pushed the bike toward our concrete front steps. Time seemed to slow. As I watched the bicycle tumble down 4 concrete steps, the metallic blue frame struck each step with horrible, clanging sounds. The front wheel folded completely in half. The rear wheel bent into an oval shape that would never roll again. The chains snapped and scattered across the concrete. The gear shifters cracked off and bounced into the flower bed. The family's laughter reached a crescendo. Uncle Robert was actually wiping tears from his eyes. Cousin Amanda was filming everything with her phone, narrating about Jessica's legendary clumsiness for her social media followers. Aunt Diane called Jessica a walking disaster in the most affectionate tone possible. Tyler finally broke down crying, not the angry tears of a tantrum, but the heartbroken sobs of a child whose trust in the world had just shattered. He ran to the twisted wreckage of his bike and tried to lift it, but the frame was too damaged and heavy for his small hands. Sarah immediately went to comfort Tyler, shooting me a look that clearly said we needed to end this party immediately. But the family was having too much fun to notice a child's genuine pain. Jessica was not finished. She spotted the photo album Sarah's mother had made for Tyler before she died from a stroke 2 years ago. The album contained 3 generations of family photos, including pictures of Tyler's grandmother, teaching him to bake cookies and read bedtime stories. Sarah treasured that album because it was one of the last gifts her mother had completed before her sudden illness. Jessica picked up the album and began flipping through pages, making comments about how nice it must be to have so many happy memories. She paused at a photo of Tyler's grandmother, pushing him on a swing, tracing the image with her finger, while Tyler watched, hopefully thinking she was admiring his grandmother's love. Then Jessica began tearing pages from the album slowly and deliberately, while explaining that Tyler needed to learn that nothing lasts forever, and that some children do not have grandmothers who spoil them with handmade gifts. She ripped the swing photo in half, separating Tyler from his grandmother's image. She crumpled the cookie baking pictures and dropped them on the ground. Tyler's sobs turned to wailing as he watched irreplaceable memories being destroyed. Sarah started crying too, not just from Tyler's pain, but from watching her mother's final loving gift being desecrated. I felt rage building in my chest, like a physical pressure. But the family's laughter continued, drowning out our anguish. Cousin Amanda was still filming now, providing running commentary about Jessica teaching Tyler valuable lessons about not being attached to material things. Uncle Robert nodded approvingly and said modern kids needed more reality checks. Patricia actually smiled while watching Jessica destroy the photo album as if this brutal lesson was exactly what Tyler needed. Jessica finished destroying the album and looked around for her next target. She spotted Tyler's new art supplies scattered on the ground from her earlier accident and began grinding oil pastels into the gravel with her heel, creating muddy smears of color. She snapped paintbrushes in half and poured watercolors into the dirt. The family's entertainment was reaching fever pitch. They were laughing so hard that some were doubled over, slapping each other on the backs and wiping away tears of mirth. Aunt Linda commented that Jessica should be on television with her comedy routine. Great Aunt Martha said she had not laughed this hard in years. Meanwhile, Tyler sat in the wreckage of his birthday presents, holding broken pieces and crying as if his heart was breaking, because it was. Every destroyed gift represented months of excitement, weeks of anticipation, and now hours of devastation that he was too young to understand. I could not take any more. I stepped toward Jessica to demand that she stop this madness immediately, but before I could speak, something extraordinary happened that changed everything forever. My father, Harold, who had been sitting silently in his lawn chair throughout this entire nightmare, slowly stood up. The laughter died in people's throats as they noticed his movement. Harold was not a man who made dramatic gestures or demanded attention, but when he rose to his full 6'2" height, the entire party fell silent. Harold's face carried an expression I had never seen before, not even during the worst family arguments or business crises. He looked at Jessica with the cold assessment of someone evaluating a complete stranger, then turned that same calculating gaze toward my mother, Patricia. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable, but Harold did not rush to fill it. When Harold finally spoke, his voice was quiet and controlled. He asked Jessica to explain exactly what she thought she was accomplishing with her behavior. Jessica immediately switched to her innocent act, giggling nervously and claiming that everything had been accidents. She said she was naturally clumsy and felt terrible about Tyler's presence. But accidents happen, and Tyler needed to learn that life is not always fair. Harold listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally, as if seriously considering her explanation. When Jessica finished her performance, he asked Patricia if she agreed with Jessica's assessment of the situation. Patricia jumped to Jessica's defense without hesitation. She told Harold that he was making too big a deal out of some broken toys, and that Tyler was crying too much over material things. She said children in her day learned to cope with disappointment instead of being coddled when accidents happened. She actually suggested that this experience would build Tyler's character and teach him not to be so attached to possessions. The rest of the family started chiming in to support Patricia's perspective. Uncle Robert said Tyler was acting spoiled and needed to toughen up. Cousin Amanda agreed that modern parents shelter their kids too much from reality. Aunt Linda mentioned how her own children learned valuable lessons from disappointment. Even Great Aunt Martha nodded and said children used to be more resilient. I felt like I was living in an alternate reality where destroying a child's birthday presents was considered educational. But Harold's expression grew darker with each supportive comment. He was not buying any of this reasoning, and his silence was becoming ominous. Then Patricia made the mistake that revealed the true depth of this family's betrayal. She turned to me and said that maybe if I had been more generous in helping Jessica through her difficult time, she would not be so stressed and accident-prone. She suggested that my selfishness in refusing to support my sister financially was partly responsible for Jessica's current unstable state. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Patricia was actually blaming me for Jessica's deliberate destruction of Tyler's gifts. But she was not finished. Patricia continued by listing all the ways I had supposedly failed as a brother. She said I was flaunting my success while Jessica struggled, that I was being stingy with family members who needed help, and that my focus on my own nuclear family was selfish and cold. Uncle Robert immediately agreed, saying I had gotten too big for my britches since my promotion last year. He reminded everyone that family is supposed to support each other and that I had plenty of money to help Jessica get back on her feet. He actually suggested that Tyler having fewer expensive toys might teach him some humility. Cousin Amanda jumped in with her own grievances, saying I had become distant and judgmental since Sarah's cancer diagnosis. She claimed I acted like I was better than the rest of the family just because I had a stable marriage and career. She said Jessica's behavior today was probably a cry for help that I was too self-centered to recognize. Aunt Linda added that Jessica had been struggling emotionally since her breakup 6 months ago, and that a caring brother would have stepped up to provide support, instead of judging her lifestyle choices. She said my coldness toward Jessica was probably making her feel even more worthless and desperate. The pile-on continued as more relatives shared their opinions about my character flaws. They painted me as a selfish success story who had forgotten his roots and abandoned his family responsibilities. According to them, Jessica was the victim here acting out because of my neglect and cruelty. I stood there listening to my own family systematically destroy my reputation while defending someone who had just traumatized my 7-year-old son. They were more concerned about Jessica's feelings than Tyler's devastation. They cared more about family politics than basic human decency. But the worst revelation came when Patricia shared details about private conversations I thought had been confidential. She told the group that I had refused to co-sign a loan for Jessica's car repair last month, forcing Jessica to take expensive financing that strained her budget. She mentioned that I had declined to pay for Jessica's therapy sessions, claiming I should prioritize my sister's mental health over my own family's comfort. What hurt most was realizing that Patricia had been discussing my personal finances and family decisions with relatives painting me as a villain in stories I did not even know were being told. Every private conversation with my mother had apparently been shared and analyzed by the extended family, with everyone reaching the same conclusion that I was selfish and uncaring. Harold had remained silent through this entire character assassination, but I could see his jaw muscles tightening and his hands slowly clenching into fists. When Patricia finished her speech about my failures as a brother, Harold asked her one simple question. He wanted to know if she truly believed that financial stress justified destroying a child's birthday presents while the entire family laughed at his pain. Patricia doubled down on her position. She insisted that Tyler was not seriously harmed, that children recover quickly from disappointment, and that Jessica's emotional needs were more important than a few broken toys. She said I was being dramatic, and that Tyler would forget about this incident within a week. Harold nodded slowly, as if Patricia's answer had confirmed something he already suspected. He looked around at the faces of all the relatives who had been laughing at Tyler's misery and nodding along with Patricia's justifications. He seemed to be memorizing each person's position in this family divide. Then Harold walked over to Jessica, who was still standing near the wreckage of Tyler's bicycle, looking pleased with herself despite her fake remorse. He stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. He asked Jessica one final question. He wanted to know if she was proud of what she had accomplished today. Jessica must have sensed that her usual manipulation tactics would not work on Harold in his current mood. She tried a different approach, claiming that she loved Tyler and would never hurt him intentionally. She said she felt terrible about the accidents and just wanted Tyler to learn that happiness should not depend on material possessions. Harold listened to her explanation with the patience of a man who had already made his decision. When Jessica finished speaking, he took a step backward and began removing his wedding ring with deliberate slowness. The simple gold band that had been on his finger for 38 years came off with some difficulty, as if it had become part of his body over the decades. The family watched in confused silence as Harold held the ring up to catch the afternoon sunlight. No one understood what was happening, but everyone sensed that something significant was about to occur. Harold looked directly at Jessica, then shifted his gaze to Patricia, making sure both women were paying complete attention. The rest of the family leaned forward unconsciously, straining to hear what he would say. In the clear, carrying voice of a man who had spent 40 years giving orders on construction sites, Harold spoke 4 words that would echo through our family forever. "I'm changing my will." The words landed like bombs in the sudden silence. Jessica's face went white. Patricia gasped and took an involuntary step backward. The entire family froze as they processed the implications of Harold's declaration. But Harold was just beginning. He slipped his wedding ring into his shirt pocket and began speaking in the calm, measured tone of a man who had been planning this moment for months. He explained that he had been watching our family dynamics with growing concern, but today's events had crystallized his thoughts into concrete action. Harold revealed that he had been secretly documenting Jessica's behavior and Patricia's enablement for the past year. He had recordings of phone conversations where Patricia coached Jessica on the best ways to manipulate me for money. He had copies of text messages where Jessica complained about my success and plotted ways to embarrass me at family gatherings. He had bank records showing every dollar Patricia had funneled to Jessica from their joint accounts. The family listened in stunned silence as Harold methodically laid out his case. He described the Christmas dinner 8 months ago when Jessica deliberately broke Sarah's grandmother's crystal serving bowl while helping clear dishes. Everyone had called it an accident, but Harold had noticed Jessica's satisfied smile when no one else was looking. He mentioned the time Jessica borrowed $3,000 from me for emergency dental work, then used the money for a vacation to Las Vegas that she documented extensively on social media. When I discovered the deception, Patricia had convinced me not to confront Jessica because it would damage her fragile self-esteem. Harold had witnessed Jessica selling some of the gifts I had given her over the years, including the expensive winter coat I bought for her last birthday and the jewelry set I had chosen for Christmas. She sold these items to fund her lifestyle, while continuing to ask me for additional financial support. But the most damaging revelation came when Harold described hiring a private investigator to document Jessica's activities over the past 3 months. The investigator had followed Jessica to bars, where she bragged about manipulating her successful brother. He had recorded conversations where she described elaborate plans to make me feel guilty for having money while she struggled. The investigator had also documented Jessica's deliberate sabotage of previous family events. Last 4th of July, she had purposely left raw chicken in the sun for hours, causing food poisoning that ruined the barbecue. At Tyler's school play in March, she had arrived late and drunk, causing a scene that embarrassed Tyler in front of his classmates and teachers. Harold explained that he had been consulting with lawyers for months, updating his estate planning and preparing legal documents. He had recordings, photographs, and written documentation of everything he described. This was not an emotional outburst, but a carefully planned intervention based on concrete evidence. The family members who had been laughing at Tyler's pain minutes earlier now looked sick as they realized the magnitude of what they had supported. Harold's estate was worth over $2 million from his successful construction business money that Jessica and Patricia had been counting on inheriting. Harold announced that Jessica and Patricia were completely removed from his will effective immediately. His lawyer had prepared the paperwork weeks ago, waiting only for Harold's final decision about whether to execute the changes. Today's events had made that decision easy, but Harold saved the most shocking revelation for last. He explained that every dollar Patricia had given Jessica over the past 3 years had come from Harold's personal accounts. Patricia had been using their joint checking and savings to fund Jessica's lifestyle, without Harold's knowledge, believing she was being clever about hiding the transactions. Harold had discovered the financial manipulation 6 months ago when his accountant flagged unusual withdrawal patterns. Since then, he had been quietly tracking every penny while building his legal case. Patricia had transferred over $47,000 to Jessica during this period, money that was supposed to be building their retirement security. Effective immediately, Harold was removing Patricia's access to all joint accounts. Jessica's rent car payment, credit cards, and living expenses would stop within days. Harold had already opened new accounts in his name only and transferred the remaining funds to protect them from further misuse. The impact on Jessica would be immediate and devastating. She had no savings, no steady income, and no backup plan because she had been relying on Harold's money channeled through Patricia. Her apartment lease required 60 days' notice, but she would not have money for next month's rent. Her car would be repossessed within weeks when the payments stopped. Uncle Robert tried to interrupt Harold's explanation, claiming that families should stick together and work through problems instead of using money as a weapon. Harold turned his steel gaze toward Uncle Robert and calmly asked if he would be volunteering to financially support Jessica's lifestyle going forward. Uncle Robert immediately backtracked, mumbling that he was not in a position to take on that responsibility. Cousin Amanda, who had been filming Tyler's destruction for social media entertainment, suddenly found her phone very interesting and avoided making eye contact with anyone. Aunt Linda suggested that Harold was being too harsh and should give Jessica another chance to prove herself. Harold responded by asking Linda how many chances someone deserves after systematically manipulating and stealing from family members for 3 years. When Linda could not provide a specific number, Harold nodded, as if her silence proved his point. Harold announced that his entire estate would now go to me and Tyler, along with a trust fund to secure Tyler's education and future. He had also arranged for Tyler to receive immediate compensation for today's destroyed gifts, including a replacement bicycle that would be delivered tomorrow morning. Jessica finally found her voice and began pleading with Harold to reconsider. She claimed that she had learned her lesson and would change her behavior if given another opportunity. She promised to pay back every dollar she had taken and to seek professional help for her problems. Harold listened to Jessica's desperate promises with the same patient attention he had given her earlier explanations. When she finished begging, he asked her one simple question that cut through all her manipulation tactics. He wanted Jessica to explain why she chose Tyler's 7th birthday party during his mother's cancer recovery as the appropriate time to teach him lessons about disappointment and loss. Jessica could not answer because there was no reasonable explanation for her cruelty. Her silence stretched uncomfortably as she realized that Harold's decision was final and that no amount of pleading or manipulation would change his mind. The family members who had been supporting Jessica's behavior minutes earlier were now calculating their own positions in this new reality. They realized that their primary source of family wealth had just shifted dramatically, and that their previous alliance with Patricia and Jessica had become a serious liability. But Harold was not finished revealing the full scope of his knowledge and planning. Harold reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents. He explained that what the family had witnessed today was not a spontaneous decision, but the culmination of extensive investigation and legal preparation. The folder contained evidence that would shock everyone present and permanently destroy any remaining sympathy for Jessica. Harold revealed that he had been funding Jessica's entire lifestyle for 3 years without realizing it. Every dollar Patricia claimed was coming from her own accounts or part-time job was actually Harold's construction business profits. Patricia had been systematically lying about the source of Jessica's support, while Harold worked 70-hour weeks to build their retirement security. But the financial deception was only the beginning. Harold had discovered that Jessica had been actively sabotaging my success and reputation within the family for years. She had spread lies about my marriage, claiming that Sarah and I were having problems and that I was considering divorce. She had told relatives that I was ashamed of my blue-collar family background and trying to distance myself from them. Jessica had also been intercepting family communications to create artificial drama. When Harold's brother died last year and left a small inheritance to be shared among the grandchildren, Jessica had convinced Patricia to demand a larger share for her while telling other relatives that I was being greedy about the distribution. The resulting family tension was entirely manufactured by Jessica's manipulation. Harold opened the folder and began reading from documented conversations his private investigator had recorded. In one particularly damning exchange, Jessica was heard telling her friend Stephanie that she planned to destroy Tyler's birthday party to teach me a lesson about supporting family. She had specifically targeted Tyler because hurting my child would cause me maximum emotional pain. The family listened in horror as Harold read Jessica's exact words describing her plan to systematically destroy Tyler's gifts while making it look accidental. She had practiced her clumsy routine and prepared her explanations in advance. Every moment of Tyler's devastation had been carefully orchestrated to cause suffering. Jessica had also bragged about her previous successful manipulations, including the time she convinced Patricia that Sarah was being controlling and trying to turn me against my family. She had fabricated stories about Sarah making rude comments about Jessica's lifestyle and appearance poisoning Patricia's relationship with her daughter-in-law, based on complete lies. Harold revealed that Patricia had been actively working against my marriage for 2 years because of Jessica's false reports. Patricia's occasional coldness towards Sarah, her criticism of our parenting decisions, and her suggestions that I was being henpecked were all based on Jessica's manufactured stories, designed to create family divisions. The investigator had also documented Jessica's theft of family heirlooms over the past year. During visits to Harold and Patricia's house, Jessica had been stealing small, valuable items that she sold online to supplement her income. She had taken Patricia's pearl earrings, Harold's silver watch, and even some of my childhood photos that contained historical family images. Uncle Robert's face went gray when Harold mentioned that Jessica had offered to sell him information about my business contracts and client relationships. She had attempted to access my home office during family gatherings to photograph confidential documents that Robert could use for his competing construction projects. Cousin Amanda stopped filming when Harold revealed that Jessica had been feeding her false stories about my family for years, specifically designed to make me look bad on social media. The investigator had copies of text messages where Jessica coached Amanda on the best ways to embarrass me at family events while making it seem spontaneous and funny. Harold announced that effective immediately, he was cutting off all financial support not just to Jessica and Patricia, but to any family member who had participated in today's cruelty. Uncle Robert owed Harold $12,000 from a business loan 2 years ago, money that Harold was now calling in immediately with full interest. Cousin Amanda had been receiving monthly payments from Harold to help with her childcare expenses support that would end today. Aunt Linda had borrowed $8,000 for her husband's medical bills debt that Harold was transferring to a collection agency since she clearly had no loyalty to family members who were actually struggling. Even Great Aunt Martha, who had simply laughed along with everyone else, would lose the monthly assistance Harold provided for her prescription medications and grocery delivery service. Harold explained that supporting cruelty toward children was not something he could overlook, regardless of someone's age or relationship to him. The family members who had been enjoying Jessica's entertainment began protesting that they did not understand the full situation and would not have supported her actions if they had known the truth. Harold responded that laughing at a child's pain should have been unacceptable regardless of the circumstances, and that their moral failure was complete and inexcusable. Jessica made one final desperate attempt to salvage the situation by claiming that she had been suffering from depression and alcohol problems that affected her judgment. She promised to enter rehabilitation immediately and make amends to everyone she had hurt. Harold listened to this new excuse with visible disgust. He pointed out that Jessica had been perfectly capable of planning and executing complex manipulation schemes for years, indicating that her judgment was functioning fine when it served her interests. Mental health problems did not excuse calculated cruelty toward innocent children. Patricia tried to support Jessica's explanation by suggesting that the family should rally around Jessica during her mental health crisis instead of abandoning her when she needed help most. Harold responded by asking Patricia why she had never expressed concern about Jessica's supposed mental health problems during the years when they were profiting from my financial support. Harold revealed that he had already consulted with addiction specialists and mental health professionals about Jessica's behavior patterns. The consensus was that Jessica displayed antisocial personality traits characterized by manipulation, lack of empathy, and parasitic lifestyle choices. These were not symptoms of depression, but indicators of fundamental character problems that rarely responded to treatment. The private investigator had also discovered that Jessica was not actually unemployed, as she claimed. She had been working part-time jobs for cash to avoid reporting income while continuing to receive financial support from family members. She was deliberately maintaining the illusion of helplessness to maximize her access to other people's money. Harold announced that all the evidence he had collected would be turned over to appropriate authorities. Jessica's theft of family property constituted multiple felonies. Her manipulation of Harold's finances through Patricia could be prosecuted as elder abuse. Her destruction of Tyler's property today, captured on cousin Amanda's own video recording, provided clear evidence for civil and criminal charges. The family that had been united in mocking Tyler's pain 30 minutes earlier was now facing the reality that their entertainment had cost them everything. Harold's support had been the foundation of their extended family's financial stability, and that foundation was now completely destroyed. But Harold saved his final revelation for me, and it would change my understanding of everything that had happened. Harold turned to me and said something that took my breath away. He explained that he had been waiting for this exact moment to arrive because he needed to see if I would finally stand up for myself and my family, or continue enabling the people who were systematically abusing us. He revealed that he had been secretly proud of my success and character for years, but frustrated by my willingness to accept disrespect in the name of family harmony. He had watched me endure Jessica's manipulation and the family's criticism, while continuing to provide financial support and emotional energy to people who gave nothing positive in return. Harold had been hoping that I would eventually reach my breaking point and establish firm boundaries with toxic family members. Today's events were designed to force that confrontation because he knew Jessica's behavior would only escalate if left unchecked. With Harold's support behind me, I finally found the courage to speak the truth that had been building inside me for years. I told the assembled family that this was the last time any of them would be welcome in my home or my life. I was done being their personal ATM while they talked behind my back and undermined my marriage and parenting. I announced that I had been consulting with a lawyer about Jessica's harassment for months, particularly after she keyed my car in a grocery store parking lot last month. I had security camera footage of that incident and several others where she had deliberately damaged my property while pretending the encounters were coincidental. The restraining order paperwork was already prepared and would be filed Monday morning. Jessica would be legally prohibited from coming within 500 feet of my family, our home Tyler's school, or Sarah's workplace. Any violation would result in immediate arrest and prosecution. But my real anger was directed toward the family members who had enabled Jessica's behavior while demanding that I continue supporting their own financial needs. I systematically addressed each person who had laughed at Tyler's pain while lecturing me about family obligations. Uncle Robert owed me $4,000 from 2 years ago when his business equipment needed emergency repairs. He had promised to repay the loan within 6 months but had never mentioned it again. Meanwhile, he had been telling other family members that I was stingy and unwilling to help relatives in need. Cousin Amanda had borrowed $1,500 18 months ago for car repairs that would allow her to keep her job. She had never made a single payment toward repaying the debt while posting social media content about expensive vacations and shopping trips. She had also been spreading rumors about my marriage based on Jessica's lies. Aunt Linda had received over $3,000 from me over the past year for her husband's medical expenses. I had provided this help gladly because I believed they were genuinely struggling with healthcare costs. But Harold's investigation revealed that they had been using the money for home renovation projects while claiming poverty to multiple family members. Even Great Aunt Martha had been receiving monthly grocery deliveries that I arranged and paid for through a local service. She had been telling her friends what a generous nephew she had while simultaneously criticizing my parenting and supporting Jessica's behavior toward Tyler. I revealed that I had been documenting every loan, every gift, and every act of financial support I provided to extended family members. The total amount over the past 3 years exceeded $28,000 money that was given freely without expectation of repayment, because I believed I was helping people I cared about. But the financial support was ending immediately for everyone who had participated in today's cruelty. More importantly, I was implementing a complete communication cutoff. I announced that I was changing my phone number, email address, and social media accounts. None of them would have access to contact me or my family going forward. Sarah and I had already been house hunting in a different neighborhood, where Tyler could attend a new school district. We'd put an offer on a beautiful home, 20 miles away, where Tyler could start fresh, without the baggage of family drama affecting his education and friendships. Tyler's new school had excellent programs for gifted students and a strong anti-bullying policy that would protect him from the kind of cruelty he had experienced today. Sarah and I were committed to surrounding our son with people who valued kindness and respect rather than treating child abuse as entertainment. I told the family that they had made their choice when they decided Jessica's amusement was more important than Tyler's well-being. They had shown their true character by supporting deliberate cruelty while demanding continued financial benefits. I was no longer willing to pretend that blood relation created obligations to accept abuse. The family members who had been so confident in their moral authority minutes earlier were now scrambling to apologize and claim misunderstandings. Uncle Robert insisted that he had not realized Jessica's behavior was intentional. Cousin Amanda claimed she thought everything was just harmless fun between aunt and nephew. But their excuses revealed the depth of their moral bankruptcy. They were not apologizing because they recognized the wrongness of their actions. They were panicking because they realized the financial consequences of losing my support and Harold's inheritance money. Harold and I had discussed our joint response plan weeks earlier, preparing for the inevitable confrontation that Jessica's escalating behavior would create. We knew that toxic family members would only change their behavior when faced with real consequences that affected their own interests. I announced that Harold and I would be spending Tyler's remaining childhood building positive relationships based on mutual respect and genuine affection. We would create new family traditions that celebrated Tyler's accomplishments rather than tearing them down for other people's entertainment. The house hunting process had already identified several neighborhoods with strong community involvement and excellent schools. Tyler would have opportunities to develop friendships with children whose families shared our values about treating others with kindness and respect. Sarah's health continued improving every month, and our focus was on creating a peaceful environment that supported her complete recovery. The stress of managing toxic family relationships had been affecting her healing process, something I had not fully realized until Harold pointed out the connection. Harold revealed that he had been planning to surprise Tyler with weekly grandpa adventures once we moved to our new home. He wanted to teach Tyler construction skills, take him camping, and share stories about building something meaningful through hard work and integrity. But first, we needed to complete the legal processes that would protect my family from future harassment and manipulation. The aftermath of that day unfolded exactly as Harold and I had planned, bringing justice and peace to our lives in ways I had never imagined possible. Within 30 days, Patricia filed for divorce when she realized that Harold's financial support was permanently gone and that her enablement of Jessica had cost her everything she had worked to build over 4 decades of marriage. Jessica was forced to move out of her apartment within 6 weeks when she could not make the rent payments. She tried desperately to find employment that would support her lifestyle, but her years of manipulation and entitlement had left her completely unprepared for the reality of independent adult responsibility. She eventually moved back home with Patricia into a small 2-bedroom apartment in an older part of town. The restraining order proved essential when Jessica attempted to approach Tyler at his new school 3 months later. The security cameras captured her trying to convince Tyler to get in her car so she could explain why his family was being mean to her. The school's prompt action and police response resulted in Jessica spending 2 nights in jail for violating the protective order. Uncle Robert's business failed within 4 months when he could not secure the loan he had been counting on asking me to co-sign. His equipment was repossessed, and he was forced to take a job working for one of his former competitors. Cousin Amanda had to move back in with her parents when she could not afford rent without the monthly support she had been receiving from Harold. Aunt Linda's husband discovered that she had been lying about using my financial help for his medical bills. Their marriage ended in a bitter divorce when he learned that his wife had been funding home improvements while he felt guilty about accepting charity for healthcare expenses. Great Aunt Martha lost her prescription assistance and grocery delivery service, forcing her to rely on community services for seniors. But the most satisfying transformation was watching Tyler flourish in our new environment. His new school recognized his artistic talents and placed him in an advanced program for creative students. His teachers were amazed by his maturity and kindness toward other children, qualities that had been overshadowed by family chaos in his previous school. Tyler made friends quickly with children who shared his interests in building models, drawing, and reading adventure stories. His 8th birthday party 18 months later was a celebration of genuine joy, with 12 classmates who appreciated his creativity and kindness. Every gift was opened with gratitude and protected with care by children who understood the value of friendship and respect. Harold became Tyler's closest companion and mentor, teaching him woodworking skills in a workshop they built together in our new garage. Tyler learned to use tools safely and take pride in creating useful objects with his own hands. The photo albums from their projects showed Tyler's growing confidence and Harold's obvious pride in his grandson's developing character. Sarah's health continued improving steadily in our peaceful new environment. Her oncologist attributed some of her remarkable recovery to the reduced stress levels she experienced after cutting ties with toxic family relationships. She returned to teaching with renewed energy and passion, finding joy in nurturing other people's children the same way we protected and encouraged Tyler. The new house became a gathering place for genuine relationships built on mutual respect and affection. Tyler's teachers visited for holiday dinners. Our neighbors became close friends who celebrated our successes and supported us during challenges. Harold spent every Sunday with us, creating the warm family traditions that Tyler would remember for the rest of his life. 6 months after the birthday party disaster, I received desperate phone calls from Patricia begging me to help Jessica, who was facing eviction again and had no resources left. I listened calmly to Patricia's explanations about how Jessica had learned her lesson and deserved another chance to prove herself. When Patricia finished pleading, I explained that Jessica had received exactly the consequences she had earned through years of manipulation and cruelty. I pointed out that actions have natural results and that protecting people from consequences actually prevents them from learning and growing. I told Patricia that Tyler had learned the most valuable lesson possible from Jessica's behavior. He now understood that respect and love must be earned through character and kindness, not demanded through family obligation or emotional manipulation. He had learned to value relationships with people who celebrate his joy rather than destroy it for their own entertainment. The conversation with Patricia was the last contact I had with my original family. I felt no sadness or regret about the separation because I had gained something far more valuable than their conditional acceptance. I had learned to prioritize the well-being of people who actually loved and supported me over the demands of people who only valued me for what I could provide them. Harold lived to see Tyler graduate high school with honors and earn a full scholarship to study engineering at Arizona State University. Tyler's graduation speech included a tribute to his grandfather, who had taught him that true strength comes from protecting others rather than exploiting them. Harold passed away peacefully 2 years later, leaving behind a legacy of integrity and love that continued inspiring Tyler throughout his adult life. Tyler grew up understanding that family is not defined by blood relation but by mutual respect, genuine affection, and shared values. He learned to build relationships with people who celebrate success rather than resent it, who support others during difficulties, rather than exploit their vulnerabilities, and who treat children with kindness rather than cruelty. The birthday party disaster that seemed like the worst day of our lives actually became the catalyst for creating the peaceful, loving family environment that Tyler deserved. Sometimes losing toxic family members means gaining the space for real love to flourish. Harold's decision to change his will that day taught all of us that protecting innocent people from abuse is more important than maintaining fake family harmony. Tyler learned that adults who truly love children will always defend them against cruelty, even when that defense requires difficult choices and personal sacrifice. As Tyler prepared to leave for college, he thanked Harold and me for teaching him the difference between people who deserve his trust and people who only want to exploit his generous nature. He understood that kindness should be protected and nurtured, not taken advantage of by manipulative individuals who mistake compassion for weakness. The family we built after cutting ties with toxic relatives was smaller, but infinitely stronger, based on authentic love, rather than obligation, mutual respect, rather than manipulation, and genuine care, rather than conditional support. Tyler grew up surrounded by people who celebrated his accomplishments, supported his dreams, and protected his innocence from those who would exploit it. Looking back, I realized that Jessica's destruction of Tyler's birthday gifts had actually been a gift to our family. It forced us to choose between enabling abuse and protecting love. We chose love, and that choice created the foundation for Tyler's happy, healthy childhood and successful future. The best revenge against people who try to destroy your joy is building an even better life without them in it. Tyler's laughter in our new home, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about his happiness, was sweeter than any apology Jessica could have offered. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice between family loyalty and protecting the people you love most? How do you handle relatives who mistake your kindness for weakness and try to take advantage of your generous nature? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video to help other people find it who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Subscribing to the channel helps me continue sharing these important stories about standing up for yourself and the people you love. And please share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve to be surrounded by people who celebrate their joy, rather than destroy it for entertainment. Thank you for listening to Tyler's story and for understanding that sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting innocent people from those who would harm them. I hope your own families are filled with the kind of genuine love and respect that every child deserves to experience.